Welcome into Just 5 minutes from me to pontificate, gas bag, just talk about something. Now, look, I could do this for 5 hours on a lot of stuff, but when it comes to the Ryder Cup, 5 minutes is probably not going to be enough, but let me try to be succinct about several things in the fallout and the aftermath of the 45th Ryder Cup at Bethpage. And let me start with Europe, because I've said it for a while, and having spent my life being consumed by performance of athletes, because I find it mesmerizing, but athletes that I have watched have mostly been parts of teams. Yes, I cover golf, and it's an individual sport, but Europe and what they do and how they do what they do should be applauded, because they are one of the great teams in global sports. And I think the fact that they only convene to perform together once every 2 years only amplifies how good they are, because their captain was not somebody who has spent his life being a coach. No, he's been a player. And the players have spent overwhelmingly the time that they play the game of golf trying to pursue something in a singular fashion. And then they get together and they look at each other and go, I'm going to invest everything I have in you, and you, and you, and you. And what has that produced? 11 wins in the last 15 Ryder Cups. That's extraordinary. And 5 straight decades they won on the road. Meanwhile, the United States has won once on the road since 1981. You know what happened in 1981? Stripes was released. And if you haven't seen Stripes, you should be ashamed of yourself, because you're not a whole person. All right, let me move on to the United States. And the idea that they don't care enough, or they don't care to the point that it can be matched by Europe. Look, they care, they try, but what they don't have is something that Europe possesses that they'll never have. Just the mere existence of them being from the United States, and the idea of American exceptionalism, and we're better at you than everything. And in a lot of things, that's true. But you know what? That was true about the United States basketball team until it wasn't. And what did they do? They stripped it down to the studs, because a lot of people said, just send your best players, we'll beat everybody. But 1992 changed everything. And the other thing about USA basketball, which I think is analogous to the Ryder Cup, is that it's a different game. The rules are different. And in the Ryder Cup, the format's different. So these are not 12 guys, even though they went out in singles and dusted them on Sunday for various reasons. It's different. And so the way that you have to examine it needs to be different. And here's the other thing about it, is that Europe always seems to win the narrative before the event starts, like the idea that the Americans are getting paid and they aren't. First of all, they are getting paid, but all the revenue that goes to them goes back into their tour that owns the Ryder Cup on their side, and the Americans don't. And oh, by the way, the guy who was supposed to be the captain for Europe in 2023, the reason he wasn't is because he left for a bag of money. And so did a lot of other guys who are going to be captains. Look, they're materialistic as well, and they're capitalists, and God love them for being that way. But they always seem to win the narrative. The United States always seems to be changing course. You can't name a captain in a whimsical way. As all the people I've had on this program over the last couple of days have said, there has to be some type of evolution. And there was no evolution for Keegan Bradley, because Tiger Woods, who was the guy that they appealed to, passed. They decided to go in an entirely different direction, and they went with somebody who I thought did an admirable job, most importantly in the run-up to it. But he was not somebody who had even been a vice captain. And when on Friday or Thursday night, for that matter, before Friday morning in foursomes, the caddies make the suggestion that Scottie Scheffler and Russell Henley should play the holes in a certain way. You play odds, you play evens. The caddies? I thought we had a data-driven system with vice captains, and all of a sudden the caddies make an appeal about who should be odds and who should be evens, and that's where you go? That doesn't work. And Tiger doesn't solve everything. But back to the original point. Not only does Europe have a system and a soulful way about going about it, they got a bunch of dudes that are going to be at Adair Manor. So by the time the Americans show up there, the problems they have institutionally are only going to be solved by being able to beat those rough riders on the other side. Europe's great, and they ain't going anywhere. That's just 5.